The thunder outside my loft apartment matched the storm brewing in my chest as I hunched over blueprints at midnight, red pen in hand, marking structural flaws that could ruin someone if left unchecked. That's what I do for a living. I'm Quentin Blair, civil engineer, 32 years old, and I spend my days making sure buildings don't collapse on people. Ironic, considering my own life was about to crumble. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The envelope sat on my drafting table like a loaded gun. Plain white, addressed to Naomi Blair, my wife, from Midwest Genetic Testing. I'd intercepted it from our mailbox earlier, and something about it made my stomach twist. Naomi hadn't mentioned any medical tests, and we'd been trying to start a family for months. Why would she need genetic testing without telling me? Quentin? Naomi's voice drifted from the bedroom. Are you coming to bed? I glanced at the clock. 12:47 a.m. She'd been distant lately, spending more nights at her sister's house than here with me. Her sister Jessica lived across town, and according to Naomi, she was going through a rough divorce and needed emotional support. Noble of my wife to help, except Jessica had been happily married for 8 years and had no plans to divorce anyone. In a minute, I called back, my voice steadier than I felt. The envelope seemed to pulse under the harsh light of my desk lamp. 3 years of marriage, and Naomi had never lied to me about anything significant. Sure, she'd fudged details about shopping expenses or claimed she'd eaten lunch when she'd skipped it, but nothing major, nothing that would require genetic testing behind my back. I heard the bedroom door close and the soft sound of Naomi settling into bed. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for the envelope. The adhesive had loosened in the humidity, making it easy to open without tearing. Inside was a single sheet of paper with laboratory letterhead, prenatal paternity test results. The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Prenatal. She was pregnant and hadn't told me. The test compared DNA samples from the fetus to 2 potential fathers, sample A, unknown male, and sample B, Liam Foster. Liam Foster. I knew that name. Naomi's high school boyfriend, the one she'd dated for 2 years before we met. The golden boy quarterback who'd gone to state on a football scholarship and flamed out after a knee injury. He'd moved back to town 6 months ago, and Naomi had mentioned running into him at the grocery store. Just a casual encounter, she'd said. Nothing important. The results were clear, 99.97% probability that Liam Foster was the biological father. I set the paper down with surgical precision, my engineering mind automatically cataloging facts. Naomi was pregnant. The child wasn't mine. She'd been lying about her whereabouts, probably meeting Liam instead of helping her fictional divorced sister, and she'd ordered a paternity test to confirm what she already suspected. The storm outside intensified, rain lashing against the windows of our converted warehouse loft. I'd bought this place before we married, spent 2 years renovating it myself. Exposed brick walls, polished concrete floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Maumee River. It was my sanctuary, filled with my drafting equipment, my books, my carefully planned life. A life that had just been demolished as thoroughly as any condemned building. I folded the test results and slipped them back into the envelope, then walked to our bedroom. Naomi lay on her side, dark hair spilling across the pillow, breathing the deep, even rhythm of genuine sleep. She looked peaceful, innocent even. No trace of the woman who'd been systematically destroying our marriage for months. In the morning, I'd confront her. Tonight, I needed to think. I returned to my desk and opened my laptop, fingers moving automatically across the keyboard. Property records, financial documents, insurance policies. I pulled up every piece of our shared life and began making lists. Naomi's name appeared on very few documents. The apartment was mine, purchased before our marriage with money I'd saved from my first engineering job. The car was in my name. Even our joint checking account was technically mine, with Naomi added as an authorized user. She'd been smart about keeping her independence, maintaining her own credit cards and freelance graphic design business. But she'd been careless about covering her tracks. I opened her laptop, she never locked it, and scrolled through her browser history. Dozens of searches for Liam Foster over the past 3 months. His social media profiles, his current address, even his employment history at Morrison Construction. She'd been planning this for a while. Her email told the rest of the story. Messages between her and Liam dating back 4 months, starting innocent enough but quickly turning intimate. The last exchange was from yesterday. Liam, when are you going to tell him? Naomi, soon. I need to handle this carefully. Quentin's got money and stability. I can't just throw that away. Liam, so what's the plan? Naomi, I tell him the baby is his. He'll be thrilled. He's been wanting kids forever. After it's born, if he ever questions it, I'll say a real man would stay and raise the child regardless. His guilt will keep him in line. Liam, and if he doesn't buy it? Naomi, then I'll take half his assets in the divorce and come to you. Either way, I win. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a mistake. This was a calculated plan to use me as either a willing dupe or a financial safety net. Naomi had turned our marriage into a business transaction, and I was the sucker holding the bill. The thunder rumbled again, closer this time. I closed the laptop and walked to the window, watching lightning illuminate the empty street below. 3 stories down, the city looked small and manageable. Problems had solutions. Structures could be reinforced or demolished and rebuilt. My marriage was structurally unsound. Time to condemn the building. I woke up at 5:30 a.m., same as every weekday for the past decade. Naomi was still asleep, one arm draped over the pillow where I should have been. I'd spent the night on the couch, staring at the ceiling and planning my next moves with the same methodical precision I used to design bridge foundations. Step 1. Confirm the pregnancy. I searched through Naomi's purse while she slept, finding what I expected in a zippered compartment she thought was hidden. 3 positive pregnancy tests, dated 2 weeks ago. She'd known for 14 days and hadn't said a word. Step 2. Gather evidence. I photographed the paternity test results, the pregnancy tests, and printed screenshots of her email correspondence with Liam. Everything went into a manila folder that I locked in my desk drawer. Step 3. Prepare for confrontation. By 7 a.m., I had coffee brewing and breakfast waiting when Naomi emerged from the bedroom, wearing the blue silk robe I'd bought her for our anniversary. She looked beautiful in the morning light, and for a moment, I felt a stab of genuine loss for what we could have been. "You're up early," she said, settling at the kitchen island. "Couldn't sleep?" "Storm kept me awake." I poured her coffee, adding cream the way she liked it. "How's Jessica doing? Still having trouble with Mark?" Naomi's hand paused halfway to her mouth. "Jessica? Your sister, the one you've been helping through her divorce." "Oh, right. It's been hard for her. I might need to stay over there again tonight." I nodded, watching her face. She was good at lying. I'd give her that. Steady eye contact, natural voice inflection, just the right amount of concern for her fictional sister's fictional problems. "Actually, I was thinking we could stay in tonight. Order takeout, watch a movie. We haven't spent much time together lately." Naomi's smile looked painted on. "That sounds nice, but Jessica really needs me right now. Maybe this weekend?" "Sure, this weekend." She finished her coffee and headed for the shower. I heard the water start, then the sound of her phone buzzing on the nightstand. A text from Liam. "Can't wait to see you tonight. My place at 8?" I deleted the message and put her phone back exactly where she'd left it. At 8:45, Naomi kissed my cheek and headed out to help Jessica. She was wearing the black dress I'd complimented her on during our first date, and she smelled like the expensive perfume I'd bought her for Christmas, all dressed up for her high school sweetheart. I waited until her car disappeared around the corner, then got to work. The first box was for her clothes. I folded everything neatly, I'm not a monster, and packed her entire wardrobe into storage containers I'd bought during my lunch break. Shoes, jewelry, makeup, all of it went into labeled boxes that I stacked in the living room. The second box was for her art supplies and graphic design equipment. Naomi was talented, I'd always acknowledged that. Her freelance business was small, but steady, and she'd built a decent client base over the past 3 years. She'd need her tools to support herself and her new family. The third box was for personal items, photos, books, the ceramic cat collection she'd inherited from her grandmother. I left our wedding photos on the mantel. She could decide what to do with those. By 11 p.m., Naomi's presence had been efficiently erased from my apartment. Our apartment. My apartment. I was sitting at my drafting table when she came home at 11:47, her hair slightly mussed and her lipstick gone. She stopped in the doorway, staring at the boxes. "Quentin? What's all this?" I turned in my chair, holding the paternity test results. "I think you know." Her face went through a series of expressions: confusion, recognition, panic, and finally, cold calculation. The mask was off now, and I could see the woman who'd been planning to destroy my life for her own convenience. "Where did you get that?" "It came in the mail. Addressed to you, but delivered to my apartment. My name's on the lease." Naomi crossed her arms, shifting into defensive mode. "You opened my mail. That's illegal." "So is fraud. So is adultery in a marriage." I stood up, keeping my voice level. "How long have you been sleeping with Liam?" "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. 4 months of planning, 4 months of lies, 4 months of using me while you figured out your exit strategy." I held up printed copies of her emails. "I read everything, Naomi. The whole sordid plan." Her face flushed red, then went pale. "You went through my computer?" "Your computer? The one I bought you? The one connected to my internet service in my apartment?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Everything in this place is mine, Naomi, including the right to know when my wife is carrying another man's baby." She sat down heavily on the couch, her hands shaking. "Quentin, please, let me explain." "Explain what? How you were going to pass off Liam's kid as mine? How you planned to guilt me into staying if I ever found out? How you saw me as either a sucker or a meal ticket?" I walked over to my desk and pulled out a manila envelope. "Here's your explanation." Inside was a formal eviction notice, typed on legal letterhead from Morrison & Associates, the law firm that handled my business contracts. 30 days, I said. "That's what Ohio law requires for month-to-month tenants. You're not on the lease, so legally, you're just a guest who's overstayed her welcome." Naomi's eyes filled with tears, but I wasn't moved. I'd seen her cry before, when she wanted a new car, when she'd maxed out her credit cards, when she needed me to co-sign for her business loan. Tears were just another tool in her arsenal. "You can't do this. I'm pregnant." "Yes, you are, with Liam's baby. Congratulations." "Quentin, please, I made a mistake, but we can work through this. A real man would—" "A real man would what?" I interrupted. "Stay and raise another man's child while his wife continues lying to his face? Support a woman who sees him as nothing more than a paycheck?" I shook my head. "A real man has self-respect, Naomi, something you apparently don't understand." She stood up, anger replacing the fake tears. "Fine. You want to throw away 3 years of marriage over one mistake? Go ahead, but I won't make this easy for you." "You don't have to. I already made it easy for myself." I handed her another envelope. "Copies of the paternity test, your emails with Liam, and documentation of your lies about Jessica's divorce. I've also taken the liberty of sharing this information with a few interested parties. What do you mean? Your parents, for starters. I drove over to their house this afternoon and had a very interesting conversation with your father about Christian values and the sanctity of marriage. Naomi went white. Her parents were strict Catholics who'd barely tolerated our civil ceremony. They'd been pressuring us to have children and get married in the church. Learning that their daughter was pregnant with another man's baby while married to me would be devastating to their carefully maintained social standing. You didn't. I did. Howard was very disappointed. Judith cried. I felt a twinge of guilt about hurting her mother, who'd always been kind to me, but Naomi had made her choices. I also called Jessica to let her know she wouldn't need to provide any more cover stories for your affair. You bastard. Maybe. But I'm an honest bastard who doesn't lie to people who trust me. I gestured toward the boxes. Your things are packed. You can take them tonight or I'll have them delivered wherever you want. But you're not sleeping here anymore. Naomi grabbed her purse and phone, her hands shaking with rage. This isn't over, Quentin. You'll regret this. The only thing I regret is not seeing through your act sooner. She slammed the door hard enough to rattle the windows. I heard her car start, then the screech of tires as she peeled out of the parking lot. I poured myself a scotch and sat down at my drafting table, looking out at the storm. The rain had intensified, turning the streets into rivers. Somewhere out there, Naomi was probably calling Liam, expecting him to welcome her with open arms. She was about to learn that backup plans don't always work out the way you expect. The next morning brought sunshine and a series of increasingly frantic phone calls from Naomi. I let them all go to voicemail, listening to her progression from anger to bargaining to desperation as the reality of her situation sank in. Quentin, we need to talk. What you did was cruel and unnecessary. Please call me back. My parents won't even speak to me. Liam says he needs time to think. I have nowhere to go. You can't just throw me out like garbage. I'm carrying a child. The last message came at 2:00 p.m. Fine. You want to play hardball? I'll see you in court. I was sitting in Murphy's boxing gym when I heard it, taking a break from pounding the heavy bag. The gym was my refuge, a place where problems could be solved with sweat and violence, controlled violence, the kind that built character instead of destroying it. Sounds like your lady's got some fight in her, said Coach Rick Martinez, a weathered man in his 50s who'd trained amateur boxers for 20 years before a heart attack forced him into retirement. He'd become my unofficial mentor and the closest thing I had to a father figure since my own dad passed away. She's not my lady anymore, I said, unwrapping my hands, and she's about to learn that threatening me was a mistake. Rick raised an eyebrow. What kind of mistake? I told him everything, the affair, the pregnancy, the lies, the eviction. Rick listened without judgment, occasionally nodding or shaking his head. So, what's your plan? He asked when I finished. Scorched earth. She wanted to play games with my life? Let's see how she likes having her life turned into a game. Be careful, son. Revenge is a dish best served cold, but it can poison the cook if you're not careful. I appreciated Rick's concern, but my mind was already working through the possibilities. Naomi thought she could threaten me with lawyers and courts. She had no idea what she was dealing with. That evening, I made a series of phone calls. The first was to Naomi's biggest client, Henderson Marketing. I'd met Tom Henderson at a charity dinner 6 months ago, and we'd bonded over our shared frustration with unreliable contractors. As luck would have it, Tom was looking for a new graphic designer. Tom, it's Quentin Blair. We met at the United Way dinner? Quentin, good to hear from you. How's the engineering business? Busy as always. Listen, I wanted to give you a heads up about something. I know you've been working with my wife, well, soon-to-be ex-wife on some projects. Naomi? Yeah, she's been doing great work for us. Why, what's going on? We're getting divorced. Some infidelity issues on her part. I just wanted to let you know that things might get messy, and you might want to consider whether you want your business associated with that kind of drama." There was a pause. "I appreciate you letting me know. That's unfortunate. I'm not trying to hurt her business, Tom. Just thought you should be aware of the situation in case it affects her work quality or availability." "Of course. Thanks for the heads up." The second call was to Naomi's car insurance company. Her policy was bundled with mine for the family discount, and as the primary policy holder, I had the right to make changes. I'd like to remove my wife from our joint policy, effective immediately. "Is she getting her own coverage, sir?" "That's her decision to make." The third call was to our credit card company. Naomi was an authorized user on my account, but I was the primary cardholder and financially responsible for all charges. I need to remove an authorized user from my account. "Can I ask the reason for the change?" "Divorce. I want to make sure there are no unauthorized charges going forward." The fourth call was the most satisfying. I dialed Liam Foster's number, which I'd found in Naomi's phone contacts. "Hello? Liam, this is Quentin Blair, Naomi's husband." Silence. "I know about the affair, the pregnancy, all of it. Naomi's been evicted from my apartment, so I assume she'll be moving in with you soon." "Look, man, I don't want any trouble." "No trouble at all. I just wanted to congratulate you on becoming a father. It's a big responsibility, supporting a woman and child. I hope you're prepared for that." We haven't really talked about." "Oh, you haven't talked about it? That's interesting, because Naomi seems to think you're ready to play house." I let that sink in. "Anyway, I'm sure you two will figure it out. Good luck." I hung up before he could respond. By Friday, the dominoes were falling exactly as I'd predicted. Naomi's car had been impounded after she was pulled over for expired registration. Without insurance, she couldn't renew it. Henderson Marketing had politely terminated their contract with her, citing changing business needs. Her credit cards were maxed out from the shopping spree she'd gone on after our confrontation, probably thinking she could stick me with the bill. And Liam had apparently decided that fatherhood wasn't in his immediate plans. According to Shannon Lee, Naomi's best friend and biggest gossip in our social circle, he'd told Naomi he needed space to process everything and had asked her to find somewhere else to stay. Shannon called me Friday night, ostensibly to check on my well-being, but really to fish for information she could spread around town. "Quentin, I heard about you and Naomi. I'm so sorry." "Thanks, Shannon. It's been a difficult time. I can't believe she would do something like that. I mean, I knew she was going through some things, but I never thought—" "Some things?" "Well, she'd been talking about feeling trapped, you know? Like maybe she'd settled down too young and missed out on experiences." I almost laughed. Naomi was 30 years old and had been married for 3 years. If she felt like she'd missed out on something, she should have thought about that before taking vows. "Did she talk to you about Liam?" Shannon's voice got conspiratorial. "A little. She said running into him brought back a lot of memories. I told her to be careful, that the past should stay in the past. But you know how Naomi is when she gets an idea in her head?" "Yeah, I know exactly how she is. She's staying at the Motel 6 on Reynolds Road. I offered to let her crash at my place, but honestly, Quentin, I can't afford to get involved in this drama. My husband would ruin me. I understand completely." After I hung up, I felt a moment of genuine satisfaction. Naomi had burned through her backup plans in less than a week. Her lover didn't want her parents had disowned her biggest client had dropped her, and her friends were keeping their distance. She was learning the hard way that actions have consequences. But I wasn't done yet. Saturday morning, I drove to the Motel 6 on Reynolds Road. It was a rundown place that rented rooms by the week to people down on their luck. The parking lot was full of rusted cars and broken dreams, and Naomi's silver Honda looked as out of place as a diamond in a trash can. I wasn't there to gloat or confront her. I was there for reconnaissance. Through the thin walls of room 127, I could hear Naomi on the phone, her voice rising with desperation. "Mom, please, I know I made mistakes, but I'm your daughter. I need help." A pause. "I can't go to Liam's. He's not ready for this kind of commitment." Another pause. "What do you mean I made my bed? This is your grandchild we're talking about." I heard something crash against the wall, probably her phone, followed by muffled sobbing. Part of me felt sorry for her, the part that remembered our wedding day, the promises we'd made, the future we'd planned together. But that part was getting smaller every day, overwhelmed by the reality of what she'd done to us. I drove away before she could spot my car. That evening, I met Rick at Murphy's for what had become our regular Saturday night ritual. A few beers and war stories about the construction business. Rick had worked as a crane operator before his boxing career, and he understood the kind of men I dealt with every day. "How's the divorce situation?" he asked, nursing a Budweiser. "Progressing. Naomi's learning that life without a safety net isn't as easy as she thought." "And how are you holding up?" It was a fair question. The truth was, I felt like I was functioning on autopilot. Work, gym, home, repeat. I wasn't sleeping well, and food had lost most of its appeal. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity, like I'd been walking through fog for months, and suddenly the air had cleared. "I'm angry," I admitted. Not just at her, but at myself for not seeing it sooner. Hindsight's 20/20, kid. You can't blame yourself for trusting your wife. Can't I? There were signs. The late nights, the phone calls she'd take in the other room, the way she'd changed toward me. I ignored all of it because I wanted to believe we were happy. Rick leaned forward. "So what are you going to do about it?" "What do you mean?" "You've got her on the ropes, but she's still standing. You going to finish this fight or let her recover and come back swinging?" I thought about that as I drove home. Naomi was down, but not out. She was resourceful and manipulative, and given time, she'd find a way to land on her feet. Maybe she'd reconcile with Liam, or find another man to support her, or even try to come back to me with some sob story about temporary insanity. The thought of her moving on, of building a life with someone else while I dealt with the wreckage of our marriage, filled me with cold rage. Rick was right. It was time to finish the fight. Sunday morning, I drove to Morrison Construction, where Liam worked as a project manager. The company was owned by Frank Morrison, a hard-nosed businessman who'd built his reputation on reliability and family values. Frank was also a deacon at St. Mary's Catholic Church, where he'd known Naomi's parents for 20 years. I found Liam in the parking lot, loading tools into his truck. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in the past week, stubble on his face, bags under his eyes, the cocky confidence I remembered from high school replaced by nervous energy. "Quentin." He straightened up when he saw me, his hand moving instinctively toward the toolbox like he was reaching for a weapon. "Relax, Liam. I'm not here to fight you." "Then what do you want?" "To talk. Man to man." He glanced around the parking lot, probably hoping someone would witness whatever was about to happen. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not? You were man enough to sleep with my wife. Surely you're man enough to have a conversation with her husband." Liam's face flushed red. "Look, I never meant for things to go this far. Naomi said you two were having problems, that the marriage was basically over." "And you believed her?" "She seemed sincere." I laughed. "She is sincere. Sincerely selfish. Did she tell you about her plan to pass your kid off as mine?" "That's not... She wouldn't..." "She would, and she did. I have the emails to prove it." I pulled out my phone and showed him screenshots of Naomi's messages. "She was going to use me as a backup plan in case you didn't work out." Liam read the messages, his face growing paler with each line. "Jesus Christ. So now you know what kind of woman you're dealing with. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" I don't know. This is all happening so fast. Well, you better figure it out soon, because Naomi's pregnant with your child, and she's going to need support. Financial support, emotional support, a place to live. Are you ready for that responsibility? Liam looked like he was going to be sick. I'm barely making ends meet as it is. I've got student loans, credit card debt. I can't afford to support a family. Then you probably should have thought about that before you started sleeping with a married woman. I left him standing in the parking lot, staring at his phone like it might explode. Monday morning brought the call I'd been expecting. Naomi's voice was hoarse, defeated. Quentin, we need to talk. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Can you meet me somewhere? Where? The diner on Secor Road, 1 o'clock. I arrived early and chose a booth in the back, where we could have privacy. Naomi walked in at exactly 1 o'clock, and I barely recognized her. The confident, put-together woman I'd married had been replaced by someone who looked like she'd been sleeping in her car. Her clothes were wrinkled, her hair unwashed, and she'd lost weight she couldn't afford to lose. She slid into the booth across from me, her hands shaking as she reached for the coffee the waitress poured. You look terrible, I said. Thanks. You look great. There was no sarcasm in her voice, just exhaustion. What did you want to talk about? I want to come home. I almost choked on my coffee. Excuse me? I made a mistake, Quentin, a huge mistake, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this. Whatever it takes? Counseling, therapy, whatever you want. I'll cut off all contact with Liam. I'll be the wife you deserve. I studied her face, looking for signs of the manipulation I'd grown used to, but all I saw was desperation. And the baby? We'll raise it together. You always wanted children. This could be our chance. To raise another man's child while you pretend to be faithful? I will be faithful. I swear on my mother's grave. Your mother's not gone, Naomi. She started crying then, real tears this time. Please, Quentin. I have nowhere else to go. Liam won't return my calls. My parents won't speak to me. I'm living in a motel room and I can barely afford that. You should have thought about that before you decided to destroy our marriage. I know I screwed up, but people make mistakes. Couples work through things like this all the time. I leaned back in the booth, watching her fall apart. 6 months ago, her tears would have broken my heart. Now they just made me tired. You're right, I said finally. People do make mistakes. But what you did wasn't a mistake, Naomi. It was a calculated betrayal that went on for months. You didn't just cheat on me. You planned to defraud me. I never meant— Yes, you did. I read your emails, remember? You meant every bit of it. I stood up and dropped a $10 bill on the table. Find somewhere else to live, Naomi. Find someone else to support you and your baby, because it's not going to be me. I walked out of the diner, leaving her crying into her coffee cup. In the parking lot, I sat in my car for a few minutes, waiting for the guilt to hit me. It never came. The final blow came 3 weeks later, at the annual United Way charity gala. It was the kind of event Naomi and I had attended together for the past 2 years, local business leaders, politicians, and social climbers gathering to write checks and network. This year, I went alone. I was nursing a scotch at the bar when I spotted them across the room. Naomi, wearing a dress I'd never seen before, hanging on the arm of a man I recognized as David Chen, a successful real estate developer who'd recently gone through a messy divorce. She'd found her new meal ticket. Quentin Blair, good to see you, buddy. I turned to find Tom Henderson, the marketing executive I'd warned about Naomi weeks earlier. He was slightly drunk and overly friendly, the way people get at charity events. Tom, how's business? Great. Hey, I wanted to thank you for that heads up about your wife. We dodged a bullet there. Oh? Yeah. After we terminated her contract, we found out she'd been inflating her hours and billing us for work she'd outsourced to cheaper freelancers. Could have been a real mess if we hadn't caught it. I filed that information away for later use. I'm glad I could help. You know, it's funny. I saw her here tonight with David Chen. Didn't take her long to bounce back, did it? I followed his gaze across the room. Naomi was laughing at something Chen had said, her hand resting on his arm in a gesture that was both intimate and possessive. She looked happy, confident, like the past month of hardship had never happened. "No," I said. "It didn't." But as I watched, I noticed something else. Chen's body language was polite but distant. He was going through the motions of being a gentleman, but his attention kept wandering to other conversations, other people, and when Naomi leaned in to whisper something in his ear, he actually stepped back slightly. She was trying too hard, and he was already losing interest. I finished my drink and walked across the room, timing my approach for maximum impact. Naomi saw me coming, and her face went pale, but she couldn't escape without making a scene. "Hello, Naomi. David." Chen extended his hand with professional courtesy. "Quentin, right? I think we met at the Chamber of Commerce mixer." "That's right. How's the real estate business?" "Busy, always busy." He glanced at Naomi, who was standing frozen beside him. "I was just hearing about Naomi's graphic design work. She's very talented." "Oh, she's talented at a lot of things," I said with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Tell me, has she mentioned that she's pregnant?" The silence that followed was deafening. Chen's face went through several expressions: surprise, confusion, and finally understanding as he looked at Naomi's slightly rounded belly. No, she hadn't mentioned that." "It's early yet," Naomi said quickly. "I wasn't sure when to bring it up." "The baby's due in about 6 months," I continued conversationally. "Congratulations to both of you." Chen's confusion deepened. "Both of us?" "Well, I assume you're the father since Naomi and I are divorced, unless—" I let the implication hang in the air. Naomi grabbed Chen's arm. "David, let me explain." But Chen was already stepping away from her, his face hardening with the realization that he'd been played. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Naomi, I'll talk to you later." He walked away without looking back, leaving Naomi standing alone in the middle of the crowded ballroom. She turned to me, her eyes blazing with fury. "You bastard! You couldn't just leave it alone, could you?" "Leave what alone? I was just making conversation." "You destroyed my chance with David." "I didn't destroy anything, Naomi. You did that yourself the moment you decided to lie to him about being pregnant with another man's baby." "He would have understood if you hadn't interfered." "Would he?" "Because from where I'm standing, it looked like he was already having second thoughts about whatever game you were running on him." Naomi's face crumpled, and for a moment she looked like the broken woman I'd seen in the diner. But then the mask slipped back into place, and I saw the cold calculation that had destroyed our marriage. "This isn't over, Quentin." "Yes, it is." I pulled an envelope from my jacket pocket. "Final divorce papers. Signed by the judge this morning. We're officially done." She took the envelope with shaking hands. "What about the baby?" "What about it? The paternity test you ordered proves it's not mine. You're free to pursue child support from the actual father." "Liam won't even talk to me." "Then I guess you should have chosen your backup plan more carefully." I walked away, leaving her standing alone with her divorce papers and her shattered plans. At the bar, I ordered another scotch and watched the crowd mingle and laugh, oblivious to the small drama that had just played out in their midst. 6 months later, I heard through Shannon Lee that Naomi had given birth to a son. Liam had finally stepped up and acknowledged paternity, but he'd also filed for custody, claiming Naomi was an unfit mother. The last I heard, she was working at a call center and living in a one-bedroom apartment across town. I never saw her again. As for me, I sold the loft and bought a house in the suburbs, started dating again, carefully this time, learned to trust my instincts instead of ignoring red flags, built a life that was smaller but more honest than what I'd had with Naomi. Some people might say I was too harsh, that I should have forgiven her and tried to work things out. But those people don't understand what it's like to have someone you love systematically destroy your faith in them, piece by piece, lie by lie. Naomi had called me weak, had counted on my desire for a family to make me accept her betrayal. She'd been wrong about that, just like she'd been wrong about everything else. I wasn't weak. I was just done being her victim. They say living well is the best revenge. But sometimes, making sure the person who wronged you faces the consequences of their actions runs a close second.